3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition.
98.5 Speed FM. Catch us if you can.
And now, here's your host,
King James.
A warm welcome to Extra Speed on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM. Catch us if you can. This is King James YiYE here from the Spice Center in Makwidi, Benue State. That's Judge's Quarters. And of course, Extra Speed, you know how we do it. We just bring you that extra touch of what you need to know. Now, today on Extra Speed, especially for those of you who are also watching us on Facebook, we are looking at this. What is it? Can you see it? Okay. Powering peace through climate change. And of course, I have guests from International Alert. If you can see or you can just listen. Yeah. Facebook, you can see my guests there. On radio, they need to introduce themselves now as we move on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM. Catch us if you can. King James YiYE here, play music of your life, but also bringing talk of your life. Okay, so on Extra Speed this morning, I have the country director, International Alert Nigeria, Paul Bemshima Nyulaku. You're welcome to Asking Radio and Extra Speed.
Thanks, King James. Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right. Also on the program here is the program manager, North Central and Northwest International Alert Nigeria, Anicetus Atakpu. You're welcome.
Thanks, Kings.
All right, so I was asking the senior programs manager in Benue how they pronounce your name. So he had to actually, educate me a lot before you came on. Okay, so now that you're here with the country director, let me start by asking you, any of you can actually answer this. Briefly tell me what International Alert is all about.
All right, thanks, King James. International Alert, sometimes half jokingly, when people hear alert, it sounds like credit alert, but
we heard that yesterday.
It really means that we are on our toes, watching what's happening to peace, what's happening to development, and as in the case of this project that we have come to launch in Benue, we did the launch yesterday, what's also happening to climate change. So we are a core peace building organization headquartered in the UK, London specifically, and with over 20 country offices in the Caucasus, in Asia, in Africa, and across the world. Over 20 offices. In Nigeria, we have projects in the Northeast, now in the North Central, and in the Northwest. And we're hoping to expand even further. Our core thematic areas are in local peace building and dialogues, strategic engagements with government institutions and key stakeholders. As a matter of fact, last week we had the inaugural National Stability Dialogues, which was focused on dealing with the issues of post-election, the tensions that emerge around the post-elections, and what the preconditions for peace would be. So we are International Alert, but we also really focused on, engagements and also ensuring that conflicts in whatever form occurring in different parts of the country, we see what we can to deal with it. We believe that peace is within our power. People can actually do quite a lot to achieve peace. It seems to us like it's a choice. But it has to do with a lot of engagements, and that decision has to come from those who are involved to deal with peace. So we're really happy to be here in Benue. We had earlier implemented a Women, Peace and Security project here a couple of years ago. We're really delighted that we are here again talking about powering peace through climate action, which is a peace building project that anchors on dealing with the drivers of climate change. And I'm sure my colleague, who is the program manager, will say a bit more as we go on. Thanks.
Thank you very much for that background to this. Now, when we talk about climate change, before we started, I was joking and I said, people like former US President Donald Trump don't believe it. So, but here we want to link, how do you link, powering peace through climate change? How do you actually marry the two? Anybody can answer, yeah?
Yeah, so just like my co-director has mentioned, we, peace building, conflicts, then we are now looking at climate change. The real idea is how can we address some of those conflicts that are driven by effects of climate change. And just like you already said, when we say climate change, what do we really mean? So it means, for example, for us in Benue, when you having rainy season when you are not supposed to have it, before now, 5-10 years ago, we could predict when the rains will start falling. And then now it seems like we can no longer predict. So you see rainfall in January, February, all around the year. That is an example of what climate change means. Before now, we can predict when crops, can be planted. There is the harvest period and all that. But now it's not difficult to predict when the rains will start, to predict when we can go planting, to predict when we can harvest, right? Last year, for example, people had planted, waiting for harvest time to come, and boom, there you have the flood, so people didn't have the opportunity of harvesting, so all these are some of the effects. So when we say climate change, it's not one, it's just that the cycle of nature is no longer happening the way it's supposed to be. Earlier this year, we had the predictions of having more cold, around February. We had more cold that we normally have. So you now see somewhere like Benue becoming as cold as just, people. So these are some of the effects, and all of this have its impact on our life, have its impact on livelihood, crop. You plant yam, before you know how yam, the size will be. Now it's looking as if it's shrinking, things are not the way it's supposed to be in terms of the yields that we get from our farm. These are some of the what we mean when we say effect of climate change.
Okay, so specifically looking at this project coming to Benue now, powering peace through climate action. So it looks like just beyond saying climate change, but action needs to be taken. So, in specific terms, what is this project really about?
Yeah, so I'll just give a background, and then the program manager will come with a bit specific details in terms of the goal and the key outputs. One point I wanted to add in relation to climate change is that there seems to be some level of competition between resource users of these resources, land, forests, water, and the impact of climate change really implies that the way in which people use these resources has changed a bit. The fishes are no longer as they used to be in the rivers, and so definitely there will be a lot of competition around fishing. The land is no longer producing as it used to produce, not as fertile as it used to be because of the impact of climate change, flooding, the rivers have overflooding. And all of that imply that the quality of the land is also depreciating, is reducing. And so farmers will definitely need more expanse of land to carry out farming activities and achieve the kind of productivity in their crop yield that they used to have. So what this all implies is that there will be a kind of competition among the different users of these resources. And that competition, if not well managed, can actually lead to conflict. Conflict is a natural thing about life, but when it becomes violent, that's where it becomes a problem. And we have seen resource-based conflict happen in different parts of Benue and across the North Central. We know very well about the farmer-herder conflict. It's not primarily a climate change issue, but climate change plays a role. The way in which herders have access to grazing areas, and the way in which farmers also have access to land, and the interplay of that relationship has created some level of tension among these groups. So in essence, this project will try to identify the impact of climate change as having some kind of implication on the relationship between groups. We would also try to work very closely with local communities to ensure that they adopt this term, climate smart agriculture. When we say climate smart, again, it just simply means agricultural practices that recognize the impact of climate change and then apply and adopt modern or different ways of farming that help them increase yield and to a very large extent reduce the tensions among them, among the different groups. So we'll try to leverage on what support we are providing to communities in terms of dealing with the impact of climate change as the basis for which we have conversations, dialogue among these groups to deal with some of these issues that they face. There is a climate change angle, there is a peace angle, there's also a prosperity angle. So this project is not such that is predicated on training and dialogues. We would have seed funds that we provide for communities who would be supported to develop action plans that those seed funds will help them implement. So communities will be on the driver's seat. We're not coming with any prescriptions. We want to understand the challenges that they face. We want to understand what solutions they think we can adopt in helping them deal with these issues, so they will be the ones leading the process while we provide a bit of support for them to deal with the impact of climate change and adopt climate-sensitive agricultural practices.
If you're just joining us, this is Extra Speed with me, King James YiYE, here on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM, Makurdi. Catch us if you can. And of course, we are talking about, if you like, you can say climate change, but it's just beyond that. International Alert is bringing a project to Benue State, powering peace through climate action. And of course, we are also live here on Facebook with my guests here, the country director, International Alert Nigeria, Paul Bemshima Nyulaku, and of course the program manager, Anicetus Atakpu, and all of them are here with me on Asking Radio. Okay, just before we move on, I have a message on Facebook and a comment here. It's saying that well done, King YiYE. I love the program. The peace building objective as relates to climate change should be pursued in Benue. The narrative that climate change influences elders to move into Benue to look for grass for their cattle, as they have displaced Benue farmers into IDP camps till today. So I expect International Alert to ensure that the Benue IDP who are driven away from their homelands should be made to return to their ancestral homes. I think you want to react to that.
Yeah, sincerely is an issue that has been on ground for a very long time now. Talking about the issues of IDPs, the farmers' herders conflict, just like my country director had mentioned, is something that has been on ground for years. However, just like he mentioned, the farmers' herders conflict, even though has some element of climate change effect, is the modus operandi and the way some of those attacks have happened is not 100% because of climate change. So yes, the ones that are 100% caused by climate change, when we bring in those smart agriculture intent, support communities in developing their action plans, providing the fund for them to carry out some of these. Yes, some of those will be addressed, but those other ones that comes with intention of occupying, that might be a little bit tricky. But just like we had mentioned, and we've also discussed some of the government agencies that we have met, that we will try our best. But so this project has some levels of engagement. We have the level that this with the individual, when we talk about the prosperity in this context is working directly with the individuals to see how they can improve their yield, see how they can improve their finances and their income. We have the community engagement, which is the second level, where we're working with community leaders, the community structures, to see how they can carry out some of these plans that they have developed, how they can, there's something we call about adaptation. What has been the way, how have you been coping on this? What are the best practices? So we'll look at all those. But the other one that is most important, that also talk on what this question is all about, is the one that looks at our work with the government. So we'll be engaging very strongly with the government. We'll be having a lot of interministerial consultatives where we'll actually be looking at discussing issues. What are the other ways and other issues that will be coming up that the government can help to support? So this is one of such interventions that the government they need to come in to see how they can address those occupying syndromes and actions. But holistically addressing the primary issues, yes. However, it's also good for us to also mention here that yes, this project is coming to Benue State, but because of one of those things that define what the project is, it also have some specific locations that we'll be using as our litmus test, our primary, we'll call them area of focus, our project area that we'll be focusing. So the project is in Benue and Sokoto State, but in Benue State, we'll be working in 2 local governments. And even those 2 local governments will still fall down to 2 community each. So we have 1 project, 2 states, 4 local governments, 8 communities. Yeah. So we are very hopeful that holistically engagement with local government officials, will spread across all the local government, state engagements. If we're able to see the need for laws for passage of bills and all those, it affects the whole state. But when it comes to specifics, we have to go down to those local governments and then communities that we're working.
So at this point, at this stage of the project, which is just the implementation, doing your background before implementation actually, but specifically, country director, which areas would you want the Benue State government to partner with you on this project?
Yeah, thanks very much, King James. I wanted to add just a bit to what my colleague had just explained, and also in relation to the question you asked, a question one of the listeners asked around humanitarian intervention and relocation of IDPs to their ancestral home. This is something we're really worried about. If people are not in their ancestral homes, then there's huge impact that has on their livelihood. So imagine a situation where this project, even when we scale up, cannot happen if communities are not settled and they are not back home, they don't have lands, they are in IDP camps, so they can't access their farmlands. That's huge impact for Benue, which is an agrarian state. And if you don't have people resettled, then it's difficult to talk about building the local economy and then helping them to rebuild their livelihoods. So we recognize that this is a serious problem in Benue. We also understand the sensitivities around the farmer header issues here. And within our organization, we have got strong relationships with government institutions at the federal and at the state level. And part of what we'll be doing, as my colleague Anicetus had mentioned, is strategic engagements to provide advisory at those different levels for how we can deal with these issues. There is no sort of conflict that cannot be resolved, however complicated it is. it will be resolved as long as you are able to bring the two parties to the negotiation table, understand what their key conditions for peace are, engage on the issues, maybe begin with a ceasefire, and then much later begin to deal with the issues incrementally. But this is a process that we need to sustain. This is a process that we need to carry on with sincerity. And as we take these conversations forward, I'm sure we might track it, monitor, and see how well we are doing and how the attacks are reducing and how IDPs are gradually going back. But this is a high-level discussion. It needs commitment from the government. It needs some kind of action also at the federal level. But we will try to put in the advisory that we can based on our expertise doing this sort of work across the world to see how we can help this process. But we don't do humanitarian work. We are well connected to other humanitarian organizations, and we'll chip that in whenever there is an opportunity. So I wanted to say that initially. I didn't get your question. I think I missed some part of it. If I haven't, then you can come back.
I think you haven't actually. I just was asking what role specifically you would want the Benue State government, to play at the initial part of this project. But I think you've answered that. Now going back to Facebook, Oyinore, who asked the first question, has gone ahead to ask: are you people relating with the Federal Ministry of Humanitarian and Disaster Management? You want to answer before I move to another one?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we have those relationships. We work very closely with the Ministry of Humanitarian Affairs. We work very closely with the National Orientation Agency. We have relationships with the Office to the National Security Advisor. We have those relationships, and the strategic dialogues that I mentioned earlier on actually pull all of these key stakeholders together. And there's always an output in form of an advisory that we send to these organizations. We hope to do that at the subnational level as well. If since the farmer header issue is a big issue here, that's something we should aim to do in the coming months, as soon as the government is a bit settled and the agenda for the government and the commitment for doing this is clear. We are happy as a peace-building organization, actually one of the most reputable in the world, to support these conversations and to help with framing and the sort of negotiations that can happen around these issues.
It's Extra Speed on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM. Catch us if you can. And of course, King James YiYE here, and we're looking at International Alerts project that is coming to Benue, powering peace through climate action. And I have with me the country director of International Alerts Nigeria, Paul Bemshima Nyulaku, and of course the programs manager, International Alerts Nigeria, Anicetus Atakpu. Now, another comment here on Facebook is coming from David Haber. He says, my greetings to Anicetus Atakpu. He has been a consistent voice in promoting peace in Nigeria. Benue needs this now and forever. That's somebody who knows you, obviously. Okay, so he goes on to ask a question. What will International Alert be doing to ensure justice, because the lack of justice fuels the cycle of conflict?
Okay, yeah. So one of the outcomes of these projects is actually looking at awareness creation, trust building, and strengthening collective coexistence. And for you to build trust, definitely there must be some element of justice. And so the project is the project will be working very closely with all the necessary institutions and community structures. For example, when we had the launch yesterday, one of the key things that we ensured key people who brought we are the traditional rulers. So we had, for example, the Makodi in attendance. We had the Adagatwe in attendance. The reason is because some of these issues that happen in communities have some historical background, and some persons some persons feel hurt. Some persons has been hurt in one way or the other. Injustice perceived and actual. So part of what this project we're doing is actually just like Paul, my contractor, mentioned, is bringing all the art talks in on a dialogue table. One of the activities is actually looking at community dialogue for them to prefer lasting peace. And for this to happen, it means that everybody needs to put their card on the table, and then we're able to find out who has been hurt, who has been treated badly, who has been at the advantage part, and in all of it, find a middle ground on how people can actually get justice for those times that they've lost and all those. So I think yes, the project will be doing that, because is one of the core outcome that we intend to achieve when we talk about building trust. Because if there's no trust, I doubt if there can be peace. So once we have that, create the awareness, and just also mention that, like you said, a lot of underground work, a lot of consultations has been taking place, but we'll still be deepening it in carrying out some vulnerability analysis. One key area that ALAT is very good at is on research. So we'll be bringing that on board to doing a lot of analysis, doing a lot of assessments, for us to really understand some of these root causes, to understand some of the grievances on ground. The dialogue Paul mentioned is actually centered around building or strengthening grievance management mechanisms that are available, from the national level, and then we'll scale it down up to the community level. Once we can have good grievance management mechanisms at the community level, at the local government, and again, we are happy to even come have the Benue dialogue too, in terms of the stability dialogue, as soon as the new government comes in. Why? Because we know that there are a lot of grievances, and one of the key drivers of self-help, the kind of violence that you see sometimes, is because people feel aggrieved, and then they don't have an opportunity to express their grievances, and they feel that the system, or they feel that they are being oppressed. And then, like they always say, for those that watch 24, there's everybody has a limit that he can take, and so when people get to the limit that they can bear, they explode, and then that's why you see some of those kind of violence that we get. So once we are able to set up and have those established grievance management mechanisms, I think justice will be served to people. Yeah.
Okay, at this point, I would like to thank you for coming on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM. Before we go, however, I would like you to answer this one. This is my constituency. What is your plan for the media in this whole project, Country Director?
Yeah, so on this project, and even as International Alerts broadly, we work very closely with the media. The media is our friend, because we cannot change behavior without the media. We understand the role that the media plays in sensitization, in advocacy, and so we'll be making sure that we work very closely, providing you content that help you work with us as partners to let communities understand the impact of climate change and the need for groups to work together collaboratively to deal with some of the impact of climate change, but again, of conflict. So the media is a very core partner on this project and on everything that we do in International Alert, because we recently taken a strategic approach. And part of the key strategic partners would be the media. So we really look forward to have further conversations, even with Speed FM. Congratulations for the great work. This is such a beautiful studio. I've never been in a studio so beautiful and really professional. So I want to congratulate you. I'm really excited that you have brought this to Benue.
And to Makurdi.
And to Makurdi. And this is a great feat, really. And we are really impressed.
Thank you very much once again for coming on Asking Radio 98.5 Speed FM. That's it on Extra Speed today with me, King James YiYE. Keep an ear here, and of course, we'll be telling you more about this project from International Alert, Powering Peace Through Climate Action. I am King James YiYE. Hope you have a great day.